Morning. We're in a period now called the 3 weeks, or Bein HaMetzarim, the time between Shivah Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Something interesting is if you'll just read the Shulchan Aruch without the Ramah, so there's no such thing. Well, 3 weeks doesn't exist. It's such an important part. Somebody questions, somebody shilos. Could I buy this? Could I go here? The Shulchan Aruch doesn't exist, the thing. We have, of course, there's Shivah Asar B'Tammuz, and then there's the week of Tisha B'Av, which this year there's no week of Tisha B'Av even. So it's just Tisha B'Av. But in the Ramah, so the Ramah introduces the idea of 3 weeks of mourning called Bein HaMetzarim. I'm guessing that the reason about why the Mechaber, this would be the difference between Sephardic Jewry and Ashkenazi Jewry, and I don't know of any bigger difference. In other words, just eating rice on Pesach is a much smaller thing than 3 weeks of mourning, I would think. And probably the reason is because the Ashkenazi Jews, the European Jews, throughout history, went through so much. It's true that on Shivah Asar B'Tammuz was the breaking of the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. That's the Bein HaSheni. But since then, there were pogroms and crusades and expulsions, and we weren't allowed to live certain places. Not to mention the plagues, the black plague, the plagues that even the Ramah's family died from. So what happened? Maybe this I heard once. What happened over here was that all of the different. I mean, if you're an Ashkenazi Jew with Ashkenazi history, you can make a fast day and a mourning day just about every day of the year. Like, don't even talk about Erev Shabbos, Parshas Chukas, all the different things that were going on. So what the Chachamim did, what the Ramah did, is he concentrated most of it into these 3 weeks. These 3 weeks, it's a kula. The 3 weeks became the time of mourning, and the rest of the year is supposed to be b'simcha. It'd be b'simcha now also, but b'simcha together with mourning. Why did he pick these 3 weeks? Not just because it happens to have bookshelves of Shivah Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, but because the pasuk refers to it. The pasuk refers to these 3 weeks as something going on. Right at the beginning of Eicha, and I believe you'll find it again or before in Zechariah. It says Golsa. It says here in Eicha, Golsa Yehuda, that Yehuda went into Golus. Time of the Bayis Rishon, Yehuda went into Golus. May oini umei roiv havoda he yashva bagoyim like matzah manoyach. They never found a place of rest. Kol roit fell he sigua, and everybody always jumped after us and attacked us. Bein HaMetzarim. Bein HaMetzarim. Rashi says, what's the pshat Bein HaMetzarim? So he says the pshat pshat is that Yehuda went into Galus, and it was like there were two mountains, one on each side of us, ready to attack us, and we were Bein HaMetzar, between these two gigantic obstacles to life. Bein HaMetzarim. And then Rashi says, Medrash Haggadah, Bein Shivah Asar B'Tammuz Tisha B'Av. That another explanation of Bein HaMetzarim is between Shivah Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. So these were, and the Arizal explains that this is a time, Kabbalistically, which is not such good luck, and there's all kinds of things that during this 3 weeks, not for now, but all kinds of powers that have a koach during these 3 weeks. So the Ramah and the others before him, the Rishonim, saw fit to make this a time of mourning. And like I say, in the world of the Shulchan Aruch, it just about doesn't exist. I mean, there are some. So the Kaf HaChaim says that you should take Minhagim Avelos. Just 2 things quickly. Number one is I just want to read the Targum on this pasuk that I just read 2 minutes ago. He's Golsa Yehuda may oini umei roiv avoda. Just read a little bit. That the reason we went into Golus says al dahavim ma'anin yisaimim va'armalon v'loy segias bulchana dahavim mefalchin ba'achem b'nei Yisrael. It's not that we went into Oni or we went into Rov Avoda. That's not what the Targum says. The Targum says because we caused Oni, we caused poverty. We took advantage of orphans and widows. And we took slaves, and then we sold them, and we didn't free them on time because we didn't act ethically, says the Targum. We didn't act properly or according to Torah. Those are exactly the punishments that we had in Golus. I don't know what that has to do with Ashkenazim or Sephardim, but that's what the Targum says. The Targum says it's all one big midah, connected midah. So, in short, what is the 3 weeks? What's about the 3 weeks that we were makabel? 4 things. Remember the 4 things, and nothing else is a shiloh. Number 1, we don't take haircuts during the 3 weeks. Number 2, we don't get married during the 3 weeks. Number 3, we don't listen to music, especially live music, during the 3 weeks. We'll talk more about it. Number 4, you don't make a Shehechiyanu during the 3 weeks. So those are the 4 things that the Ramah was Mosif, and he says, be careful about these things during the Bein HaMetzarim until you get to once you get to the week of Tisha B'Av, so then you get into laundering and all that. But here it's 4 things: Tisparis, Nisuyin, Tizmara, Shehechiyanu. 4 things that are Asar. Good morning, everyone. We learned yesterday that according to the Ramah, and it comes from earlier sources, there are not 9 days of Avelos, but 3 weeks of Avelos. I explained yesterday that those 3 weeks are commemorated. That's now from Shivah Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av or until Rosh Chodesh with 4 things: not allowed to take a haircut, not allowed to get married, not allowed to listen to live music, and not allowed to make a Shehechiyanu. That's what we learned yesterday. Those are the 4 Ashkenazi chumras of these 3 weeks, which most Sephardim don't have. I just want to spend a minute on this taking a haircut. Can't take a haircut, so the Mishnah Berurah explains very simply that it's time of Avelos, and just like if somebody, God forbid, would be in an Avelos of Shloshim, you don't take a haircut during the 3 weeks. The Aruch HaShulchan, and by the way, the Mishnah Berurah says that there's no difference between men and women in this. Same thing, and no difference what part of the body we're talking about. Everything is Asar. Haircuts are part of Avelos, meaning that just the act of cutting your hair, is Asar, just like it would be Asar on Cholamoid, it's Asar on during the 3 weeks. So says the Mishnah Berurah. The Aruch HaShulchan has a different take on it. He says that shaving is not an isser. What it is having a stubble is part of this, is a siman of Avelos. That's what he says. You look like an oval when you're unshaven. An unshaven person looks like ugulust. Like I'm not really taking care of focusing on myself or on my own appearances these days. But he says something fascinating. He says that really this siman Avelos is really only during the 9 days, not during the 3 weeks. A siman of Avelos, we took on things, but it's not. But if you shave like until the last minute before the 9 days, so during the 9 days you won't have a siman of Avelos. He says the whole siman of Avelos is that you're outgrown. But if you shave until the last minute, so for instance, Shabbos morning every week, nobody looks like an oval. Look great. Why? Because you shaved on Friday. So therefore, he says, you stop shaving already during the 3 weeks. So there's machlokes here, Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan, why we don't shave or take a haircut, but I'm specifically talking about shaving now, during the 3 weeks. According to the Mishnah Berurah, it's an isser to shave. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, you've got to make sure you've got a siman when it comes to the 9 days. A very interesting thing, can you shave? A lot of poskim say that if it's going to hurt your parnasa, you're allowed to shave. Now you got to be careful with this because it means to say you're going to lose your job or lose a client or you're going on a job interview. You need some kind of a psak to rely on this. But the poskim say this, that if it's for parnasa, you're allowed to shave. Why are you allowed to shave for parnasa? You're not allowed to be mechal Shabbos for parnasa. Why are you allowed to shave for parnasa? Even if you're a ben shloshim novel, it's not so pashut that you're allowed to shave. Why should you be allowed to shave? So according to the Aruch HaShulchan, the answer is because there's nothing wrong with shaving. What's wrong with shaving is you're not going to look like an oval but during the 9 days. Okay, so you look like an oval a day later. during the 9 days. Or maybe stop a day in advance so you have a little bit of a 4 o'clock shadow there. That's what, according to the Aruch HaShulchan. According to Mishnah Berurah, it's a Shver Baisa, but I want to share with you for a second, Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Igros Moshe, says something fascinating. He says that the reason why you're allowed to shave for Parnasa during the 3 weeks is because the 3 weeks, these halachos of the 3 weeks, Avelos, are things that Klal Yisrael was accepted upon themselves. It doesn't say it in the Navi that you're not allowed to shave for 3 weeks. We accepted upon ourselves, and when we accepted upon ourselves, says Rav Moshe, we accepted it back then. We accepted it with certain conditions, and one condition is it's not going to put me out of a job. Like, yes, I want to take upon myself to be sad for the Jewish people and to show Avelos for so much of our history and so many pogroms, but the condition was that it's not going to hurt our parnasa. Why? Because they need to feed our families, so we can't, as Rav Moshe says, that if it's actually going to hurt your parnasa, there's no isser. Because Almanas Kain, we were makabel. That's a chiddush of Rav Moshe, and that's how he paskins. But however you want to understand it, either like the Rav Moshe or like the Aruch HaShulchan, that it's only a siman anyway, or not understand it according to the Mishnah Berurah, however we take it, the poskim say if there is seriously a parnasa challenge, you're allowed to shave, but that doesn't allow you to take a haircut. Haircut is a whole different thing. Just a little bit, let's say one more thing while standing here. I heard from once in Tannersville, I used to go there for the summer. So Rav Herschel Schechter Shlita is he goes to Tannersville for the summer. So he's a big posek. So he said that there's a chiyuv deraisa to shave if you normally shave. There's a chiyuv deraisa to shave l'kavod Shabbos. Mitzvah deraisa to be mechaberes Shabbos, and if what you do is shave, you have to shave. So he says it can't be that a minhag of the 3 weeks is doche the chiyuv deraisa of shaving. So he said that he thinks people should shave erev Shabbos in any case. It's very interesting that the Kavod Shabbos, he's a das yachid in this, but Reb Chaim Kanievsky says if you have to shave for parnasa, I just haven't noticed this, if you have to shave for parnasa, but don't shave on Friday or for Shabbos, because that's the one time you don't have to worry about your boss, right? You don't have to worry about parnasa. So like in a direct machlokes, I looked a little bit further into it, and somebody asked the stipler, that's Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father, whether if it's not mechubad for me, am I allowed to shave during the 3 weeks? So he said it's much more mechubad to have a beard than not to have a beard. So he says, and even if you're growing a beard, it looks at least you're in the right direction. so he was very bakbid on it. But a lot of these things, and I mean at halacha, a lot of these things are totally in culture also. Like, there's an American job culture, which, by the way, is different now than it was 10 years ago. Right now, it's very laid back and casual. It's I'm told, it's not the corporate structure as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You wouldn't think of going to work without a tie. So everything is different, but bottom line is this. If it's seriously going to hurt your parnasa, ask a shaila of a competent Rav. Good morning. Continuing in the rules of the 3 weeks of mourning. So one of the things that we don't do is listen to music. I'd like to define music and the reason why it's usher. Music is different than, let's say, taking a haircut. Taking a haircut is for the sake of showing that you're an avel. Like, the reason why we don't shave or take a haircut during the 3 weeks is that we try not to look groomed like we lost Yerushalayim. We lost the Beis HaMikdash, we should have tsar. So we're looking like we're b'tsar. Music is a little bit different. It's asr mishum simcha. Music is asr because music makes you happy and it's not the right mood. You're running around, particularly music that brings to dancing, like we're dancing, so that dancing is inappropriate to run around dancing when we're thinking about Yerushalayim being destroyed. And, these days we're thinking about it more than ever because we have Yerushalayim, but we're really waiting for it to be rebuilt. So it's the wrong atmosphere, it's the wrong mood to be b'simcha. But the isser of music is not an isser of music. The isser of music is an isser of simcha. That's the important thing. And that has a number of ramifications in halacha, both leniency and stringency, both l'kula and l'chumra. So, for instance, when it comes to music for exercise, background music at a supermarket, music lessons, giving the lessons or getting the lessons. So none of the music there in any of those cases, maybe there's other cases, but in any of those cases, its purpose is not to create simcha, its purpose is to create momentum, to create shopping mood, but it's not to create simcha. A wedding, the music there is to create simcha. It's for simcha. But if it's music lessons, sometimes it's tar. For both cases, for both people, it can be tsar. It's not mishum simcha. Practicing is not mishum simcha. If the student gets simcha in it, so then it becomes aser. A Shavah brachas, it's mutter to have music. That's what the poskim say. A lot of people are knowing not to, probably because they don't realize they're allowed to. But there's a different psychology there with a chassan and kala. I want to explain to you for a moment that this is a period in one's life when one gets married in Shavah brachas, which they're looking forward to their whole life of being besimcha, and everybody is coming around them and rejoicing and celebrating, and that's a great feeling. People are celebrating over my simcha. That's that shows that it's not like hey, I'm a chassan, nunu. Like there's a celebration. Like people are happy for me, and if you don't celebrate by a chassan and kala, so you're actually, it's not just you're not besimcha, you're taking something away from the whole mood of this new situation of chassan and kala. So therefore, the Mishnah Berurah says even by a vart, which is not yet getting married, you're allowed to sing. At a table, he says maybe it's better not to dance. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. Maybe dancing will cover the 3 weeks, but it's very important to be, because of the FOMO involved for the chassan and kala. Like I thought this was once in my life. I'm getting married. Nobody's happy. So that's why that's mutter to do. On the other, so a lot of things are mutter if it's not mishum simcha. You can figure it out yourself. One of the bothersome things is that if they have simcha dika music without music, like the a cappella, is it what makes that mutter? I can't think of anything, because even shira b'peh is aser if it's going to bring to dancing. So if it's a dancing type of music, so by the way, a lot of the music we listen to is made to get you depressed, not to make you happy. It's maybe we can call it dveikus or thoughtfulness, whatever you want to talk about. That's not aser anyways. That's not simcha dika music. But simcha dika music is gets you beating and gets you going. Dancing music. That's what's aser. So I'm not sure. Listen, I think they blare it here on the speakers Erev Shabbos, the music without music, the fake music. So I guess the Rabbanim and the poskim say it's okay, but I just want you to think about it. Like, why should it be okay? It's just it gets back to our kosher bacon shear. Something feels wrong with it for the short amount of time that we have to be without it. But that's the halacha of music. So anything's mishum simcha is aser. Recordings. If you're playing a recording, you're playing on a device. So people say, well, it's not real music, it's not live music, it's a device. But this Rav Moshe Feinstein already said about cassette tape players, that why isn't that a device? That is a device. And today, it was prophetic what he said. In other words, why isn't the tape recorder a device or your iPhone a device? And it's prophetic because today, in many, many cases, even pianos and drums are devices. They're all electronic. It's not like you're necessarily dealing with the real thing. You could be playing the drums at the top of your lungs, and nobody hears it because you're on a headphone. So they're all devices. So what are we gonna say? It's all mutter. You could have a whole band here with electronic music. That's the way they do it now. That's the way it's done. So obviously, what Rav Moshe said, a tape recorder is also a device. So the issue is not if it's a device, if it's live, if you see the trombone. That's not the point. The point is if it's mishum simcha, it's aser. If it's not mishum simcha, it's mutter. Morning. We've been mentioning that this 3-week period of Avelus is prominent in the Ramah and absent in the Mechaber. We don't find the Shulchan Aruch talk about this 3 week. He only talks about the week of Tisha B'Av and Tisha B'Av, of course. But the Ramah, and therefore Ashkenazi Jewry, does the whole 3 weeks from 17th of Tammuz until Tisha B'Av. Interestingly, the Arizal also talks about the 3 weeks. And what's interesting about that is that, first of all, that he talks about it, but also that the Sephardim usually are going with the Arizal. But the Arizal talks about it as the Chaf Aleph Yoim, the 21 days, Keneged, the 21 days from Rosh Hashanah to Hoshana Rabbah. So Rosh Hashanah to Hoshana Rabbah has 21 days, and this is an opposite 21 days on the calendar from Shivah Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av. I think in my upcoming Reb Tzadok Shir, which will take place at 9:15, I'm going to mention this Arizal with a drop more depth because it's important with the Reb Tzadok. But there's a nafkamina. One of the things that you're not allowed to do during the 3 weeks, according to the Ramah and the Arizal, is make a Shehechiyanu. To be clear, there's no prohibition on buying new things during the 3 weeks until Rosh Chodesh Av. You're allowed to go buy a new suit. You're allowed to buy whatever you want. There's no such thing. People think you're not allowed to buy new stuff. You're allowed to go to IKEA. You're allowed to buy whatever you want. The only thing you're not allowed to do is make a Shehechiyanu. So if it's something that you don't make a Shehechiyanu on, so go for it. If it's something you do make a Shehechiyanu on, so then we don't buy it during the 3 weeks according to the Ramah. However, according to the Ramah, Shabbos is excluded in those 3 weeks. So let's say you get a whole, somebody brings home, beautiful new peaches that you haven't seen, and you make a Shehechiyanu on it. You don't make that Shehechiyanu during the 3 weeks, but you can make it on Shabbos. Comes the Ari, and he says he can't make it on Shabbos either, because the Ari is talking about the 21 days. So that includes Shabbos. Let me explain a little bit more. That what's wrong with making a Shehechiyanu during the 3 weeks? Mayish. So you made a Shehechiyanu, what's wrong?
So
you're not supposed to be happy.
You should.
So that's not the pshat. Shehechiyanu is not because of Avelos. Shehechiyanu is, how can you say Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh when it's a time of Puranis? That's the pshat. You don't want it to be lazman hazeh, a time of Chorban Beis HaMikdash, time of the breaking of the walls of Yerushalayim. Why would you want to say, thank you God for this time? Save it for between Rosh Hashanah and Hoshana Rabbah. You don't say it now, Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. So, the Arizal takes it deeper, and he says, no, but there's also a Kabbalistic reason that the wrong forces are in charge during these 21 days. So according to the Arizal, even on Shabbos, you don't make a Shehechiyanu. According to the Ashkenazim, so you can't say the Lashon of Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. How do I know I'm right? So let's say, are you allowed to buy a new car during the 3 weeks? You make a Shehechiyanu, no? No. When you buy a car, a family car presumably, you make a Tova Meitiv. Tova Meitiv is mutter during the 3 weeks because you don't say this language of Lizman Hazeh. Also Bracha and Simcha, Tova Meitiv. But you can make a Tova Meitiv. Can you buy yourself a bicycle during the 3 weeks? No. Because a bicycle, a motorcycle, a unicycle, anything that doesn't have 4 wheels, it's not a family car, so you would make a Shehechiyanu. You wouldn't make a Shehechiyanu. On a car, you make a Tova Meitiv. On something for yourself, you make a Shehechiyanu. So we see from here that it's the actual nusach of the bracha that you're not allowed to say. One more thing on that note, that fascinating halacha. We don't make a Shehechiyanu, however, and therefore we don't eat new fruit. According to the Ramah, save the new fruit for Shabbos. According to the Arizal, doesn't help you. Just don't eat the new fruit. Let's say. The thing with Shehechiyanu is that you're not allowed to have a milestone of something new and something wonderful and not bless Hashem for it. That's why we make a Shehechiyanu. It's something that you have to do. If you look in the Lashon of the Poskim, excuse my 10-second tangent, doesn't talk about making a Shehechiyanu or not making a Shehechiyanu. It says, Asher lahafsid ha-Shehechiyanu. You can't lose the opportunity to thank Hashem. You just got something new. You just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Sephardi make a Shehechiyanu on their wife. We don't. I don't know why. We don't make a Shehechiyanu under the chuppah. Maybe you could take a talis, make a talis. You could also bring like a strawberry under the chuppah. You make a Shehechiyanu on the strawberry, have it come under your wife. It's a funny thing. But we don't make a Shehechiyanu. But you're not supposed to let a milestone of happiness go by without making a Shehechiyanu. A case brought in the postskim. Let's say a pregnant woman is craving for a particular fruit. This, I don't know biologically if this comes up, but in halacha, this is a big deal. Like when you're craving for something, particularly a pregnant woman, it means that your body is lacking in that nutrient, and you have to eat it. Sometimes even on Yom Kippur, you have to eat if you're craving for something. The craving is like people say. I mean, just the way I understand it, people say, drink eight glasses of water a day, drink 2 liters of glass of water a day, don't need any water at all. Probably the emes is drink when you're thirsty. That's probably because your body is telling you need water. So these cravings in Chazal are very, very important. So if there's a Shehechiyanu fruit, and this, for instance, pregnant woman is craving this fruit, she has to eat it. So the poskim say she should eat it, but she shouldn't make a Shehechiyanu on it because the issue is not the new fruit, the issue is the Shehechiyanu. But then I saw Rabbi Feinstein says that when she eats the fruit a second time, which, you lost it, you can't make a Shehechiyanu anymore, says Rabbi Feinstein she should make a Shehechiyanu the second time. Why? Because the first time was medicinal. And since it was medicinal, it wasn't mishum simcha. It was mishum craving. And the second time, now I'm eating this fruit, l'shem shamayim, and it's a big simcha, and you make a Shehechiyanu. So tzachakol of everything I'm saying is that the issue is Shehechiyanu. According to the Arizal, even on Shabbos, you don't make it. You don't save your suit for Shabbos. And according to the Ramah, you can make the Shehechiyanu on Shabbos. Mourning, it's often said that during the 9 days, in Rosh Chodesh until Tisha B'Av, you should be careful not to do dangerous things. So, to my knowledge, it doesn't say that anywhere. What it does say is that from Shivah Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, you should be careful not to do dangerous things. I can't find any place where it says something special about the 9 days in terms of sakon. 9 days is more intense mourning, more intense avelus, but not necessarily more intense sakana. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, not the Ramah, who doesn't even keep avelus for the 3 weeks, says in Tafkuf Nun Aleph if Yud Ches, Tzarech li Zaher, you have to be very careful. B'Shivah Asar B'Tammuz ad Tisha B'Av, from Shivah Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, Shloi Leilech Yechidi, that you shouldn't go hiking alone. May arba shois ad teisha shois. It doesn't mean in the city where there's a lot of people. It's talking about the Achronim explained to go someplace, take a hike someplace in the forest. Yechidi, that's yechidi means. May arba shois ad teisha shois, from approximately 8:15 in the morning until 2:30. You shouldn't be hiking alone. The Ramah, or the parentheses here adds, mishum shabahem ketev meriri sholate. Because there's something called, it's a Gemara, there's something called ketev meriri, which is active during the 3 days, 3 weeks rather, and it's only active between 8 and 2 o'clock 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What in the world is ketev meriri? I don't know. There's many mefarshim on what ketev meriri means. I mean, ketev means to cut off, and meriri means bitter, so it means a bitter cutoff. But there's some Rishonim that say in the Gemara that it refers to a certain monster with a bunch of heads and eyes and its heart and all kinds of things, like a whole monster. Thank God, I've never seen one of those. There's others that say that it means ketev meriri, you're going to get heat stroke. And there's yet others that say that it means that it's a time of the spread. I think actually the Ramah says someplace that it refers to a time where pandemics tend to spread. There's a particular time in the morning hours, something to do with the atmosphere in the air, that they felt at that time that the contagions are stronger than at other times. Whatever it is, you don't want it. So it's this Keter Meriri. And that's the whole 3 weeks. There's something about these weeks of Tammuz. Maybe we can rationalize because it's Tkufas Tammuz and it's very hot, and maybe it has to do with the weather conditions. But that's when you should not walk during those hours alone. V'lo yaku, then the Shulchan Aruch also adds lo yaku talmidim by yom mahem, and you shouldn't hit your talmidim by yom mahem. And the Mishabur says some people are makel in this. As long as you don't hit them next to their internal organs. Nobody should ever hit kids, ever. It's connected halacha, but yamim hahem. Check this with all kinds of gedolim. The cultures have changed, and nobody should ever hit their kid, not their talmidim, not their kids. However, what you do see from the Shulchan Aruch is that there's a sakana, there's a chash sakana during the 3 weeks, and this chash sakana doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the avelus of the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe with the Beis HaMikdash fell during the time because of this Keter Meriri, I don't know. But it's not a direct thing. It's a separate thing because the Mechaber doesn't even hold of this avelus in the 3 weeks. He doesn't mention that. But he does mention this sakana with, to my knowledge, no further mention of anything and get more machmer on it during the 9 days. That he doesn't say. Question is that we need to ask ourselves is what's called sakana. You have to remember that like let's say in the United States, this is when camps operate. This is when hiking takes place and swimming without lifeguards is at its glory. So what is sakana? This is when people go hiking. This is Bein HaZmanim. Like what is exactly sakana? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in the Halacha Shlomo, which we have here, he says, I didn't see it this morning, but I believe he says that anything you'd have to bench hagoymel on, you shouldn't do during the 3 weeks. Okay, so that means you can't take a trip. What does that mean? So he says, unless it's a tzarech mitzvah. So if it's a tzarech mitzvah, kegoin, for instance, you're going to visit your parents, that's an example of covered mitzvah, then you travel. But generally speaking, anything you have to make birchas hagomel on, so paragliding is not for you these 3 weeks, or flying, and it's important to mention what I often mention, that sakana is not defined by statistics. All the poskim made this point. It could be more dangerous to drive a car than to get on a plane, but you don't bench goimel after you drive a car because sakana is not defined by statistics. It's defined by hanging in the air over the Atlantic Ocean for 8 hours. That's the sakana. Like if the plane would fail, you're nowhere. The issue is it's be'etzem a sakana, not how many people die in this kind of situation. That's not how it works. So that's what Rav Shlomo Zalman says. Anything that's an unnecessary hagomel, you shouldn't do during the 3 weeks. He asks, what about things that you say a tfilas haderech for? Tfilas haderech is also for sakana. But it's interesting, not every time you say tfilas haderech do you say tfilas hagomel, right? It doesn't go together. And the answer to that in very simple terms is that tfilas haderech you say for a little bit of sakana. Birchas hagomel you say when you went through a large sakana. So that's the difference between the two. Tfilas haderech is not something which you should refrain from during the 3 weeks. Rav Shlomo Zalman says birchas hagoymel is something you should refrain from during the 3 weeks, not the bracha, but the dangerous part, unless it's a tzarech mitzvah. I once traveled, I remember, from Australia to Eretz Yisrael visiting. It was actually during the 9 days, but as we're saying, there's no difference. And Erev Tisha B'Av. And I remember asking Rav Scheinberg, is this okay to travel for 9 days? So he said, when you get to Eretz Yisrael, I'm sorry, I was traveling back. Getting to Eretz Yisrael, he said, it's a mitzvah. Never a problem coming to Eretz Yisrael. Going back, you should organize 2 or 3 people to listen to some type of a shir or something, so the whole thing, you're a shliach mitzvah. Like, in other words, turn it into a mitzvah. So that's a good thing to do during the whole 3 weeks if you're going someplace. Not just so somebody gives you a shekel and you give it out in America, but turn it into a mitzvah. Do a mitzvah, Bikr Cholim, Torah, something, do a mitzvah, and then Baruch Hashem Shluchei Mitzvah Einu Nizakim. Good Erev Shabbos.